EDS, but that's all said and done and dusted, as we like to say. And well, that all leads us to here. W7M haven't really changed too much. They've just had that time since Jönköping to kind of work on things and see what they want to try and do with their squad. And it really paid off yesterday up against Elevate, where they were able to take that series 2-0, and probably looking to do the same here up against G2 as we're getting started here on Bank.
Nook and Montaigne are going to be our two attacker bands being knocked out of lines. Pretty well what we've seen, especially for inter-regional matchups here between EU as well as Latin America. Solis still the first to be knocked out. If she's not knocked out, she's picked pretty much every single round. So makes perfect sense there. Just far too universally useful at the moment here, so she's often first in the pecking order to be eliminated for that side. And then finally, Valkyrie, very much for the same reasons. It's just obviously to a lesser extent, so we don't see her banned out as much.
It's a little bit more map dependent with Valkyrie. Yeah. She went 6 for 9 on his KD spread, so -3, but get this, 59% survival, which is actually just absurd. I believe it was almost 10% higher than anybody else in the entirety of yesterday. So let's check it really quick. Actually, no, it's a little bit less. Nathan and Tyrant actually both 54%, so apologies about that. Both of them also lights out when it comes to those numbers, but Julio doing his best to stay alive with that important utility and get those plants down for his team, always being a useful piece in the back line.
All right, well, looks like we're good to start this time, folks. So we will lock this round in here, get ourselves started with what I believe is going to be a pretty straightforward basement hold from the W7M roster. They are going to swap Julio in, of course, over towards the Clash to try and slow things down to a pretty drastic degree once we actually reach that very scrappy fight for areas like server or the red hallway, depending on the way that G2 wants to play it. And that's what the hope is in bringing Clash, that they can just put a giant obstacle in the way that would be nigh impossible for G2 to properly get past.
And here's a man that we expect a big game out of, and two of them actually, as we go back to back, Benjamaster and KZ. KZ, one of the best in the business when it came to Jönköping, so very dominant for W7M. Some incredible games. Go back and watch those if you haven't. You'll definitely know his name from that moment on. That's why we were so very prepared for this matchup right now. And what possibly W7M, the Brazilian squad, could bring to the Europeans, well, for the most part. As we know, we got a couple of Australians and some Brazilians of their own leaking into G2. It's a multicolored deck for them. Stokey's going to be working his way down white stairs.
Well, already starting the descent, G2 with some progress being made already, but at the same time, W7M, for the most part, allowing this to happen. Just going through the motions of slowly peeling back from any extensions if they had any whatsoever. So it's been a fairly lackadaisical round for both teams so far, but things are about to heat up over the next 30 seconds or so. G2 starting to establish crossfires to fend off the aggression from Blue Stairs if we do end up getting it. Away from that, of course, you can see the hatches being worked on here. That'll start the descent over the next few moments here. Not going to be able to prevent that server hatch from being popped here. KZ in the area as well, looking to assist that Clash if things get a little bit too hot. Thankfully, they still have plenty of time to play with here, so that moment has been pushed a little bit deeper into the round.
Kind of kicking the can down the road as of right now for this execution. They've at least gotten some semblance of a wrap around this site. Get the initial hatch open here, but they don't want to deal with Clash just yet. Doki's going to find himself an easy frag on a JV92 as some of his bullets go wide on the main stairs. Volps looking to recoup, but really nothing doing for W7M at the current moment. G2 have done a good job of moving things back and forth across this mid-floor and keeping W7M guessing, but finally KZ will step up and he's going to take down Alamau as they simply think that W7M are going to wait over inside of Blue Stairs, but surely not. They go for the flank and it's working out masterfully for them. Doki will finally fire back, but what's it worth at this point? 2 versus 3 and a lot more to do.
Doki with an A getting primed here. Herd's going to expect it, gets a few shots back at it. Thankfully, banks off of one of the vaults there and is going to be able to save himself from that, but can't save himself from the outright push. Doki makes it work anyway, just through brute force, taking down Herds. Re-equalizes the player count down to a 2v2. Virtue tries to make a move as well, but the angles don't align and it's the Clash on the other side of it. Anyway, and even worse now, Doki has finally been dropped on that crossfire from Elevator back in the gold. So with that said, Virtue though, actually not going out. If he can chase down and get the Clash here, might still be able to close it down, but time is running out. He's not going to be able to get it done. I don't think the Clash is too pervasive.
Smoke for the majority of the time, but when you can work that Clash in, especially in circumstances like that where it's pretty close quarters, she's fantastic at what she does. And we get to see it on full display right there. The delay, the ability to just elongate the round to an annoying degree. Clash brings all of that to the table, and it makes it super difficult to try and deal with from an offensive perspective if you don't bring any of the tools to actually deal deal with her. And it's gotten a little bit more difficult to bring those tools as well, because back in the day when Clash was a hot commodity, right? Zofia was also a hot commodity, so people would just bring Zofia all the time because she was a 2-2 with concussions. We don't see Zofia nearly as much as we used to because it isn't as easy to work her into a lineup. She's still fantastic, but she's the 3 armor, and it's just not nearly as fun to play around with that.
Repick gonna show up here at the last second for G2, moving away from the Twitch on Alamau, instead bringing the Ying into the fold here, which for this site, probably a little bit more appropriate. You're not gonna have a huge amount of quintessential utility that needs to be taken out by a Twitch drone for this specific site. The Ying dump is probably gonna be a bit more effective, especially considering the, ironically enough, openness of the open area site there. Have a pretty good chance of actually hitting people with those Candelas in the process. Bit of a cheeky angle there below the copier window. Some players from W7M trying to see if they can get lucky with the early movement from G2, but not going to see it align this early on here. Won't find anything from that, so things will go pretty quiet for the next 30 to 40 seconds here.
Yes, indeed. G2, hot to trot when it comes to the top of square, but that's really about it. Fortunately enough for them, nobody really home around this top floor. Doki's going to be over on Banana, and this is going to allow them to start breaking up a lot of this flooring. Usually some teams like to play the janitor area up top, reinforce the entirety of that, but W7M have completely went against the grain. They've just reinforced the hatches and left the top floor completely dead, silent for the defense, allowing G2 to just take it at their own means, and it's exactly what they're going to do. Full control for them. They'll have to worry about this verticality for the remainder of the round. Doki going to start working his way down. We've seen this time and time again, not only during this tournament, during this match. So he had just done this a little bit earlier on, sneaking down main stairs to get a pick onto one of our defenders down low.
Doki still patiently waiting for anything that may present itself from the main stairs position, but W7M not playing too heavily into that. They're continuing to wait very, very patiently inside of their own setup. It's allowed for a bit of success to show up in the late round, back on round number 1, but you can see a little bit more activity as that's what threw them into a winning position ultimately as we got to the deeper moments of round 1 here. We just haven't seen that yet. The site's a little bit different though. Seems like for now they can afford to play this back. There we go. Patience works out. As Volts is able to find a lineup against Doki, but he's finally ready to move forward, taking him down and bringing it to a 5v4.
Cadella's in hand, but Alamau misses. Good news, though, he's got glasses, so it won't affect him, just his teammates. Frag grenade out there as another Candela will go in. This is looking like a fantastic G2 execution as the KD and, most importantly, the kill feed goes all orange. Volps will go down as well. It's up to JV to try and clutch this out, but all of a sudden, W7M with a chance here. Blurred down, Virtue, the last one remaining, and it only takes a single shot out of that cannon in order to take down the last remaining W7M member. And staff room open area will remain winless for now.
Nasty final shot coming in from Virtue there. Beautifully done to seal the deal. But once more, you can see the problems with this site and to some extent with this map overall here. Just so many access points for G2 to utilize to get into this site. By the time they had popped everything open there, the members of W7M did not have much of a choice but to sit back and just try to win it out via a gunfight. They got close on trades, especially at the tail end of it, but nowhere near enough when you consider how much G2 had swarmed around them.
I don't speak Portuguese, so I'm gonna leave that one up to the to the Brazilians because I have no idea what Alamau just said. But either way, it's a 1-1 now as G2 gets something going for themselves. We're gonna keep the Dokkaebi in the lineup and start throwing a couple of different things around here, including the Zofia. Looks like they want to work that in here for Alamau, and they're also going to pick up the Ying. It was previously on Alamau, but now it's over on Doki instead. And we've seen how lethal he's been so far on the ARX, but now a gun with a lot more bullets, the T95 coming in. And we'll see what he can do with these Candelas. More than likely going to be an explosive entry onto this top floor.
G2 once again on the field. Time to see how they will look to get the opening clear done here. W7M still with a little bit of activity on and across the map here after the setup phase has concluded. So possibility for some early action if G2 is fast enough to catch that. More likely not going to occur. Maybe the possibility for some of that at the beginning of the last round as well. Didn't really end up leading too much, so there's that small chance of potentially seeing it here. Doki though wasting no time with his first Candela, just chucking it immediately into stock. Not going to get eaten up, but at the same time, not really going to affect anyone on W7M. They clear the room without too much of an issue there. Still have the double reinforcement as well on both of those stock walls, so certainly playable by W7M, even though they gave up the actual stock room.
Fairly plain Jane here from G2 is it's a fairly straightforward opening that we usually see here for this top floor. Very well done here with the X-Kairos. Place them low, let them go. As they're going to open up that wall. Usually ends up avoiding the impacts if you do that. And that's exactly the case here. But you can see the other problem that G2 is going to have, and it's going to be KZ here, is he's going to constantly be able to rebuff that position with those Kiba barriers, constantly applying those kunai knives and making it toward the angle through E3 is no longer existent. It means that G2 can more than likely get a little flustered with those angles that could end up perpetuating from that position. Doki's going to work his way in here. I don't know if this is on our side. From the looks of his face, I think it might be on our side. Don't exactly know just yet. Yeah, I think it is going to be a host glitch, yep. And yes, indeed, we are going to get out here. So a little unfortunate for that. We'll get the official admin call and what we will be doing here, but I do believe it'll just be a full-on round reset.
Yeah, normally 9 times out of 10 in those situations, that does lead to a reset, unless the round itself was pretty much done and dusted at that point. We still had quite a bit to be played out there, so more likely just going to call it as an unfortunate series of events and quickly rehost that one and get us back in game. Folks, super sorry for all the rehosts here. We've had quite a few of them so far in this game. Unfortunately, we've been a bit plagued with them, but we're going to once again try to get ourselves back into the game as quickly as we possibly can, so your patience in that area is appreciated. As usual here, where we work to get ourselves back into the game as quickly as possible and get out of this match to see if G2 can keep the momentum rolling here to carry forward with the lead, or if W7M has that little bit of fight left to throw back at the European roster here, mostly European, of course, by playing into the upstairs site.
I mean, we at least got to see the initial ensemble of what was going to go on there. Looked like G2 really wanting to try and take things from the lobby side, get the windows open, try and provide some play in via checkers windows, as well as the elevator hallway when they had the Hibana pop open that as well. Seemed like they had some solid strategy going on there, especially with Doki swinging in pretty quickly on the Candelas. So pretty fast acting play there, but unfortunately that one's going to be out the window. There's no guesswork involved for W7M anymore. You know, if they go for the same thing, and then it's a fairly straightforward affair for them.
So we'll see if W7M has any potential variance to that, as to some extent their hand has been revealed now as well. It's going to be the other unfortunate part of this server crash here, is G2 does get to kind of rerun things. And it is confirmed now, folks, by the way, that we are just going to replay that round. Pretty much the expected result there. We'll have to see here if W7M is going to be up for the task on the re-one. We'll be able to properly counter out some of the action we were seeing thrown at them from G2 here, or if G2 will also be able to remain strong inside of that. We do have all 10 players back into the actual server, and it looks like we're starting it up once again, folks. It should just be another 30 or 40 seconds here, and we'll be live once again with the action. If you are just joining us once more, G2 versus W7M here in map number 1 on Bank. This is the group stage of the 6th Invitational. No eliminations on the line just yet. We got a new point system, which is giving our teams a bit more of a lengthy run here to be able to play things out throughout the entire first stage of the tournament.
All right. Well, fortunately enough, for those of you that were late to the show, you haven't really missed much because we've gotten through 2 rounds. It's 1-1 right now, and we're going to be headed back upstairs for W7M. And as you were saying, John, I was kind of touching on it a bit as well. Either way you cut it for either one of these teams, the jig is kind of up. Everybody kind of knows the general play that's going to be going on now, because here's the thing. Past that, you have to use the same operators that you were using in that prior round. So they still have to try and use the tools that they brought to the table, and that's going to make it to where some of the lines that they attempt to go for are going to be very similar to what they once had. So we'll see if G2 wants to try and use Doki in a very similar fashion. We saw him trying to abuse the quad windows. We saw G2 overall trying to go for more of a lobby banana play. They could try and switch things up and go for square. They have everything that they need, you know, inside of this operator lineup to really accomplish anything that they're going to look for this top floor. And even past that, I mean, they could still work in some other things there, like, you know, they could put Doki onto the secondary hard breach for the Ying as well, and try and switch some things up, but don't really have to do all that much, especially when it comes to this top floor. As long as you got somebody like Hibana, you're pretty good to go.
Opportunity here for Herds if he can capture it, but doesn't want to take the risk on moving forward to the direct peak, so ends up falling back behind the safety of the castle barricades. Things will unfold in a very similar way to what we saw back on the initial play for this round here. Heavy emphasis, of course, on the repel play for the players from G2, just trying to take out any and all utility that is accessible to them, especially, of course, with the Zofia in play. Flash dump is going to be started here as well, so they can begin peeking into the actual hallway and see where these players are going to be positioned towards. W7M, though, very much playing this close to the chest after what we saw in the last round here. They do not want to take the risk on it, so they're trying to play things a lot more passively.
G2 not nearly as hot to trot as we saw initially here, and actually Benja going to be the one taken down now as Volps gets him from inside of Janitor, just simply playing the windows. Some Candelas in, but no fast acting play coming out of G2. But no, actually I'm mistaken. Doki back into very similar position to what we saw him prior. We've basically gotten the same round minus the picks here from W7M that have been coming pretty hot and heavy so far. Doki will finally be able to fire back up against KZ. He's going to try and transition this back into CEO. A big smoke play there. Doki's going to go down, and he'll be dusted by said smoke. It's a 2 versus 3 now with 1 minute and 20 remaining.
Blur flashed out, gonna call up Virtue to see if he can make the push forward instead to take control of main stairs. Fire back from a member of W7M holding said stairs, with the remaining 2 still positioned in a deeper position closer to the site. Blur back in the fight here now, but there's not a lot of confidence for G2 to make this play work, and with good reason too. They still have a boatload of time to finish off this round. Just now reaching the 1 minute mark with Virtue, claiming a second kill here against Herds, bringing it into a 2v2 scenario.
Knock, knock. Drone activated.
G2 slowing things down now. Do not want to get overzealous with this. Every round up against W7M of the utmost importance. This is a team that is not easy to put to bed. It's exactly what G2 is looking to do here. It always starts early. Bird gets the worm, and that's what G2 is attempting to do. They want to get ahead early, close this map out as quickly as they can, try and get onto these other maps, see if they can get something done. Apply the pressure to W7M, and that's exactly what Virtue does. They'll take down Julio. It's up to Volps now. Try and clutch this out. He's been droned, though. You know he's inside of the quad windows. He'll work his way out towards Banana. The plant's going to start going down for Blur. Volps has to try and challenge the window, but the bullets, they're going to hit more towards the ankle side instead of the head. It's going to end up being a G2 round off of that play, slowing things down in that crucial moment. Really sent W7M for a spin. They kind of got lost in translation there, making it a lot easier for G2, especially after they started things off. Look at this, Benja and Alamo both down, but needing Doki and the rest of the gang to step up here, make some big plays.
Well, a little bit of potential hope coming in here for W7M on round 4. We have officially made it around the rotation, of course, and we are back where they started and where they, so far, have been able to claim their only round. Back down in the basement. Interesting, though. Obviously, we didn't catch this on the operator pick phase, but we are immediately going to see it as we go in game. KZ bringing the Caveira into the fold for this round. So I'm very curious to see how this is going to play out. Obviously, it looks like it's going to be positioned for a roam game at the moment inside of Banana to see what kind of sneaky play he could potentially rotate out towards later on in the round, but we will just have to really wait and see what exactly KZ can deploy towards here, because it's just a roll of the dice as far as I'm concerned.
Well, a hilarious thing as well, if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Benjamaster used Cab in the very first round of Villa for our very first game, and he got the very first kill downstairs in said Villa map. So, I mean, might just be coming back to haunt them here soon enough if we get an interrogation or something along those lines. I mean, W7M are most definitely doubling down on this. You can see Herds kind of applying ghost pressure in a certain sense. What he's going to do is he's going to stick around here, let them do some drone work, maybe show some face, and then he's just going to drop off and go somewhere else to make his life a heck of a lot easier. Unless he gets into some trouble with this, because now Alamo has gotten into a pretty solid position here inside of Printer. So he could just choose to stick up top as well. Really just up to him and really about how G2 plays around this. Either way, it's really just about staying alive and trying to waste some time. Oh, Doki. That might be the moment of this round right there, watching that drone slip by.
Virtue with an angle, but doesn't realize there's a challenger waiting on the other end of it, and KZ! Doki's hand is pushed directly into KZ's lair, and unfortunately, KZ is the one that's not ready for the fight. Herd's now going to try to make up the difference, but these are off on an island at this point, and now with no support to be distributed from KZ or anyone else on his team. This is a big issue for W7M. This extended play has not worked out to even the slightest extent that they would have liked it to.
And Doki's a small guy with a heavy hand, constantly smoking everybody. This time around, though, it'll be Herds with the pack smoke as he'll take down Alum out, equalizing this man count, making things a little bit more palatable. Unless Blur has something to say about it, looks like we're going to continue this carousel. JV92 will take down Doki. It's Benja and Blur this time around in the 2v2. We love these hotly contested rounds so far here on Bank.
The dip and dash as well from W7M, just constantly seeing players run up a staircase, grab a kill, and then immediately run back downstairs as well. It's worked out for W7M to at least hold their position so far in this round. Keep it locked to a 2v2. Still at a health deficit when you look at JV92, of course, having to take that previous fight, but things will at least have calmed down now as those final two players no longer want to risk anything beyond the boundaries of the actual site. So we can see server get popped open relatively quickly here. That Toxic Babe's not going to really slow anything down that much. They're still using these few extra seconds to be able to pop open the secondary wall here for server anyway. So now we can start to see them walk towards it, and here's where that delay is going to be a little bit more effective. Still a second one in Julio's pocket as well after that one has been thrown down. But Blur, I believe he's found a safe pocket for himself. He's going to use it to go for the plant. No Nitro is on the defense. No way to stop this beyond a direct push. He'll get away with it. The plant goes down. And on top of that, though, the planter will also, or one of the defenders rather, will also be eliminated, leaving it all on Julio here, trying to run a flank. But it'll be read and taken down by Benja as G2 claim another successful attack for themselves.
Yeah, there was a drone in that kitchen, 100%. Like on that site, you're always going to have information game going on for the offense around that area, open area / kitchen. I mean, honestly, a fantastic round here for G2, but hotly contested for W7M. Back and forth we go. Just a lot of different moments that were quite awkward for both teams. You know, you have the roam game going on upstairs for W7M, and then G2 are, you know, pretty quick to thwart that, even though they had no idea that it was going on. Like, you know, just like moments like that where it's not exactly G2 planning these things out. It's just their natural cadence and ability that is taking it to W7M on this offensive side. W7M not really able to achieve all that much so far since the rehost, especially for KZ and Julio. Looking to see KZ especially step up. Julio usually the one trying to stay alive and play a lot of utility for this team.
Setup phase continuing to move for W7M. How are they going to try and re-bunker this position? It was too difficult to be able to hold the extended barriers of open room and prevent G2 from setting up for their really just closing hand grip on this site. They were able to slowly but surely crunch out any but all resistance from W7M. Very much going to be walking into the same type of setup here if they are not able to improve their position. So we have G2 out and about, and they'll begin the process of swarming around it now. So it's up to W7M to put the right aggressive foot forward here in the early round to stop that from being a success on G2's side of things.
Solid positioning here for W7M on the top floor. And just going to begin his journey here on square. Know to be occupying the marble skylight. So, fortunately for KZ, he will live to see another day, at least for the moment. I have E2 reinforced here, as that is indeed a good addition to the staff room open area defense. Shot he might want back there as he just missed Alamal's head. He's going to send some back as well. But this delivery service not really working out too well. Nobody receiving their packages. As Benja going to get back onto the drone game. G2's still trying to figure out the outline positioning of the W7M members. You can't exactly blame them. Really need to try and get things walked back towards site, and that's what this position from Blur is going to be, trying to adopt some more angles onto the hallway while Benja's working his way forward in Archive. This is going to be a fat angle for him as well if he's able to work up into it, but they've actually made just a little crack over here that they're able to work their way through. So a little interesting setup there. Blur's also going to go down. That was the hallway position, and Doki's going to trade it out on the top floor.
Doki keeping things even at least, and that's the best case scenario here for G2. As long as they can re-equalize the situation, we're likely going to be able to control it, thin out the numbers for W7M, prevent their own capability to spread out and prevent map control from being taken. The less of them alive, the closer to the chest and the closer to the site they're going to have to play. And you can already see them having swarmed back for the most part into the depths of open area. Herd's now trying to set up the Kiva barricades to make the actual late round play a little bit more palatable when G2 goes for that crunch, which they're starting to set up for now here. You can see the open area control, rather the square control here, which is going to be building up to just a moment here. At least an attempt to work their way through that and play into open. No hard breach to be seen, though, at the moment because of the earlier death of Blur. So actually ended up being a pretty good kill just in that regard, preventing them from opening up these extra angles. That alone may at least give W7M a fighting chance to win this round when everything is said and done.
And they've done a very, very good job of delaying G2. It looked like they were going to get all of the control necessary to plunge their way into this site, but it's escaped them so far. W7M keeping it close to the chest, keeping people alive. Not only that, dealing as good as they're getting with the man count. Volps is going to fire back as well. He's going to take down Virtue. A big nitro cell from KZ. Goggles on now, and no real way for G2 to try and work in unbeknownst to the defense. It's going to be up to Doki, and he's quickly dispatched. W7M get their second defensive win and the first defensive win of the entire tournament on Staff Room Open Area.
I set up my W7M to bring things back into a more palatable position. Should be 2-3 now on the scoreboard, so still going to be down by 1. However, bring things back under their own control with a very nice early pick, eliminating that Hibana and taking away all the extra angles that the players from G2 would have liked to be able to deploy, such as going into the small corner office there on the side of Open Area, as well as the bigger wall leading into Open itself that would have really limited the defensive play options there. Thankfully, able to avoid that with the early pick, and it made it far too difficult for G2 to be able to just swing their way in through the normal doorways here. So let's see what the final round will present, as W7M are going to go for that basement hold one final time. Makes perfect sense when you consider the results that they had up on the second floor. Technically got 2 plays on it there, and it just wasn't really looking that great. So they're going to go back down to the basement, where I think they have a little bit of a better chance if they play back on the clash strategy, which is exactly what they're going to do.
And oh boy, is this clash strategy one that got under the skin of G2, not able to work around Julio as it came down to the 1 versus 1 that could have been easily manageable for any G2 member if it had not been a clash, but Julio just kept shield dancing over and over again, making it quite difficult to try and shoot him in the legs. Volps is a literal psychopath. You need to get back in the building. Volps, it's smoke. There's so many like sins in this, it's not even a joke. I can't even laugh at it.
Well, he made an attempt.
He did. Yes, he did, Jonathan. Your name isn't even Jonathan. I don't know why I did that to you.
It doesn't even have that.
It's just John.
Stops at John, yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting in and of itself, but that's for another day.
I think it's pretty normal.
Yeah, and also the 3rd, but again, for another day.
Yeah, that's... You can give him like my social security number now.
752. I'm just kidding.
All right, well, we've got the players on G2 working their way forward here. It's that usual slow roll in here, as they do have to check for the roam game, since it was alive and well for W7M the last time they played into the basement site. Obviously dead and gone, and now, however, as they are playing a full bunker setup, he's working its way in there too. An attempt to throw out the electric claw is not going to work, unfortunately, but a nitro, let's see. Unfortunately, I think it's thrown at the wrong angle. It's going to land on the wall. Will not land deeper into Open, where it may have found some damage. As a result of that, it is a dead ring.
Man, JV cannot have anything in this house. He's just trying to keep these hatches sealed and can't get it done. The EMP work, it's too strong from Alamau. Now both the hatches that are of the utmost importance are open. They can still try and get the elevator hatch open here. They have another EMP from Alamau, but is JV92 in the area? And also past that, does he have enough for the electro shuffle? I don't believe he does, so this is going to be a fairly straightforward affair.
Still wanting to try and open things up over by the elevator. All hatches being prioritized right now by G2, so they have all of those options. Hertz, the first elevator hatch being popped now. Keeping a watchful eye over that to make sure that any drop is not going to be successful. And you can see G2 also starting to flirt with the first attempts to work their way downstairs. Julia will start to swing up towards top blue as well and begin the distraction here. And it will be quite distracting when you consider that we have 3 different players trying to work their way in from above server at the moment in square. One of them has just been dealt with. KZ will work his way over after claiming that kill to support Julia's position a little bit more. The flash blinding him out entirely. He cannot find the coverage of the shield. Ends up going down, but another member of G2 also getting down in the process. They'll be brought back up, however. We're now going to be moving forward. JV92 with one more trade into the favor of W7M once again to keep the numbers even at a minimum, but now G2 going for the plant. There is a nitro sitting on Hertz. Is he going to be in position enough to be able to stop this now? That is the big question. Where is it? Nowhere to be found, unfortunately. He is still rotating back over from the garage side of things. So the plant gets down onto the ground. The Toxic Babe also shows up far too late to help out with it too. Benja, with the counter angle still from up on top, is going to limit the rotation options for W7M as they try desperately to now get back into security here.
This is the hardest retake that you can have in Rainbow Six Esports. Bank downstairs, look at the positioning from G2. How do you fight these angles? The answer, you don't. Everyone is inside of a barrel at the current moment. It's down to Hertz. He can't even get an angle to try and fight back, and he will get slaughtered like a lamb. G2 Esports pick up the round, and that's going to be the half here on Bank.
So G2 Esports takes solid control at the 4-2 scoreline. And to be fair, we kind of expect them to end up with here, given the way that this map has been playing out so far, specifically at this tournament. Definitely attacker-sided and a little bit more heavily leaned towards that attacker side as well. So just beyond that at the 4-2, maybe even a 5-1 is kind of the expected scoreline so far that has been played out. Now it's, of course, up to W7M to bring just as strong of a performance now that they have that inherent advantage of the attacking side. G2 will similarly play first into, actually, no, it's going to be Tellers, excuse me here, that they'll go to for their opening site.
Well, that's the trick about Bank. It doesn't matter what site you go to. They all relatively suck. Like, the only one where it's like, when you go to it, you're like, I have a snowball's chance in hell. That's basement. That's it. Everywhere else, it's like pretty up in the air on what could potentially happen. So, and speaking of up in the air, I think this is going to be the first time in probably, I don't even know, 4 or 5 months that I've seen Vigil in an operator lineup. It has been so very long because of just the amount of other utility that is so very good, and Vigil's utility is so unbelievably selfish. And that's not to say that obviously, you know, Benj is a selfish player for bringing Vigil, but just saying that's why we're not seeing him, because he's completely selfish in the ERC7 backpack. He only does it for himself. You could bring Solus or, you know, Azami or a bajillion other things across the list to fill in that slot and still roam with him. But they're bringing it to try and get some stuff done on this top floor. That's what Vigil is good at, these extended roam games and being hidden inside of that veil, trying to hide away from those drones and keep that info game murky.
Phillips will work his way up to try and start clearing out top square. Unfortunately, as you can see, going to be quite a few obstacles in the way of that clear, so he's going to need some help from his teammates, and he will get it. Blur at the same time here, putting himself into a bit of a peculiar position here by Stock. Thankfully gets out of the way of the opening of the barricades once they already thrust themselves towards it, but did have himself exposed for a second or two prior, so was a little bit worrisome. Been able to keep himself in a good position. Does end up getting flashed away there by one of the last few hits on the Candela, so just panics, heads back down through the hatch, takes the safe option to get out of here, and that will give W7M the initial control of Stock. It doesn't necessarily lead into anything yet, however, though, as Jay as well as the interior of the meeting room still have players from G2 mounting a defense there, so even stepping into Stock may still be a little bit dangerous for W7M at this point in the round.
Well, the delay has worked out for G2, minus a loss of Virtue now. Benja is going to be forced off the top floor as well, so a little lagging than what we initially considered here, but still fruitful in a certain degree, able to at least keep Benja up and about. It'll definitely assist them going into the later portion of this round, which is about to be upon us. You can see the positioning from G2 pretty spread across this base floor. More than likely meaning that W7M doesn't have a lot of drone work done here, or the real ability to try and capitalize on that. Volts instead is just going to send it right in. He's going to get a heck of a lot of kills for doing so. Actually, they didn't know about Alamal's positions and the ones off site, but sending it into sight, you'll usually find yourself some bodies, and it seemed that the proper angle was accounted for from W7M. So going to take quite a few members. Alamal's going to deal with the top position already. So he'll take down KZ. A big player requires big plays, and this would be one for him.
Alamal with one already behind him. Going to be looking to pick up the remaining two, of course, if he can get back in for the counter defuse. Very, very tepid movement here. And consider the fact that he's playing with virtually zero intel, checking every single potential angle where someone could be playing at, but misses that one from Herds, who will finally shut him down and give the opening round of the half over to W7M.
Honestly, I think it was very well done from G2. It's unfortunate the entry wasn't exactly accounted for from you know, their angle. Just not really expecting W7M to hop right into sight, take those gunfights so quickly there. That's really what they were looking for, was the one hole they could work their way into for the actual execution. As for G2, though, I still think they did a pretty bang-up job on the top floor and being able to delay things out and keeping people in some pretty pivotal positions across that mid-floor, all things considered. But obviously W7M still able to take it, as they were able to quickly get control of the site off of the back of those two big picks, get that plant down, and gatekeep Alamal for the remainder of the round.
So into round 8 we go. Members of W7M, of course, bringing a pretty straightforward lineup that we would generally expect to see for this type of site. However, they're going to change it up quite a bit here. Hard Breach is being swapped to a different player. The Nomad is being brought in for Volps. We've got the Osa coming out as well for Julio, which is not an operator that at least yesterday we get to see a whole lot of, so we got to get a nice little preview of that. Even Zero ending up being swapped in here for KZ as well. Zero definitely an operator we, for North American teams more than anything, tend to see deployed quite often on this map, just due to the free intel you can get with how high the ceilings tend to be in some of the rooms here. You can kind of sneak those Argus cams in, and oftentimes it won't be noticed. So it needs to be a pretty good operator, but that's a pretty good jump from Doki. Knocks the head off of KZ, puts G2 on the right foot forward right from the beginning of the round. Unfortunately, cannot go 2 for 1, which would have been the ultimate W for him in this round. Only manages to trade it out 1 for 1 there and fails to escape back into the building.
Well, it has to absolutely suck that it was KZ, because I didn't even really get to see what secondary utility he had. But I'm going to go out on a limb here, John, and say he had secondary hard breach for the hatches that happened to be a necessity to opening the downstairs levels. Good news, though, is G2 actually on a roam game here, and the hatches are open, so that's not going to be that big of an issue, as well as they also have JV92, but Ace is not exactly the greatest at getting hatches, is he? Has to use 2 of those summons out of 3 in order to get a singular hatch, just a bad ratio. Never want to try and go for something like that.
It's going to go pretty quiet here, as we've been generally seeing inside of the mid-round. W7M trying to take it oh so carefully here, considering they were down a player, and as you mentioned, they're down a very important one with regards to their utility, specifically regarding intel, and potentially some of their hard breach too. Nice catch by Herds, but Alamau is going to get the credit for it, interestingly enough, and Alamau also takes down Herds, so just a little bit of an awkward scramble there between the teams. Not really a team kill, as he probably would have went down anyway, but just a bit of an awkward moment there.
He probably didn't expect Virtue to double back and try and take the fight. I mean, but hey,
that's what I'm saying. With that peek, he probably dies again anyway, so it's like, eh.
Very true. JV92. He has snuck in the back door. I believe he got in via the hatch over here inside of the vault. And yes, he did. Just slipped in through the cracks. Volps is going to be able to pick up one. Blur will take down one as well. But with this position from JV92, this could be the round right here. If they are not aware, this is all going to be onto the game sense of the G2 players. There's no way that they know this is going on. Blur will go down, but Benji gets one. And that's why you pick up a player like Benjamaster. Oh my God. G2, wow, what a play from Benja. So quick to the trigger and the transition to the player inside of the office.
Smoothly played by Benja, with certainly some worries for G2's capability to actually win that round. When you consider the free positioning that JV92 was able to get for himself, there was some question as to how exactly G2 did not manage to catch that. But thankfully, again, as you mentioned, Benja up to the task of shutting that one down and preventing disaster for the players on G2 for that round here. Now in front yet again, G2 just 2 rounds to go, and map number 1 of this series will be theirs. For the players on W7M, it's do or die time now here for the attack. They need to make these next few site plays work out. And now G2, of course, is going to be pushed to the more difficult sites to try and claim on the defensive end of this one, starting out with open area for this round, of course.
All right, W7M, this is the time. G2 is starting to get away with way too much on this defensive side. Remember, folks, especially for those that are just joining us, Bank does not have a great defensive win rate right now. In fact, it is absolutely abysmal. Before this map, it was at 30%. Now, granted, it did have one play, but that still basically stands because G2 ended up on a 4-2 split from the offensive side, obviously. Now switching over to defense with that last round and able to pick up that round. So if they can continue on this reign of terror, they could seriously shake up this stat line.
We'll see now. The W7M roster is going to be up to the task here of bringing some more attacking prowess to the table. They are trying to force the issue early on here. As you can see, JV92, at least one of the members of the squad, trying to go for early basement control. Control allowing them to swing up quite quickly into the hot zone right next to the open area site. This is looking like a quick one from W7M here, as they're also going to be trying to line up electrical control as well. This could be a big boom directly into the site for them here, especially when you consider Volps' operator choice coming in from below and immediately trying to go for a plant. Has to cancel it as Herds has found some resistance deeper into it, but just look at how smooth it is from W7M. 3 kills, no responses from G2 as of yet, and still the case as it's down to only Benjameister in the 1v5 clutch. It's a flawless round in under a minute from W7M as they make mincemeat of the defensive setup from G2.
Well, I can't wait to see all the Beast Coast players tweeting about this one. Oh my. Oh, they used our strat! You see that? They did it! It's open area. We did that one time. Yes, you did, guys. You did do that one time, and it actually worked pretty successfully that time too, didn't it?
I think it did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those plays where you just keep that in the back catalog for a rainy day, and that still happens to be around up against G2 Esports.
Indeed. So for G2, not at the end game position just yet here. W7M still has a few tricks up their sleeve, and that will immediately scare G2 away for another attempt on that site too. Completely agree with that rationale, as they'll instead head back over to Tellers. If I remember correctly, we're actually able to close that one down. But I may be wrong about that too. I think W7M did have a little bit more fight inside of that round to keep themselves in it. KZ is actually relocking the Amaru right now. So it could be in for some more fun on this one. The rest of the lineup is a bit more traditional though, so I think that the overall composition is probably going to be a bit slower and a bit more traditional in the sense of how they're going to be pushing the site as well. But KZ, personally, maybe trying to get up to some shenanigans, specifically against the upstairs roam with access to that operator. Let's find out, as they are now on the board.
So what is our play this time, KZ? What are we looking to do with the Gara hook? Well, we have a lot of options on bank past just hatches. We also have a myriad of different windows on the top floor and some other ways to be able to abuse said hook. And I'm interested to see what they want to try and accomplish with it. For G2, it's a full-on mid-floor extension with a top floor roam here. You can see Virtue's applied some of those kunai to Banana to make it a more structured position to play around, but this seems to be where KZ wants to quickly try and get into a fight. Virtue's going to get rid of JV92 down low, but that's going to make it to where KZ can't exactly go for that swing anymore. There's no supporting angle, no supporting cast member to try and get into this play. Blur's going to add on to this heap as well. He's going to take down Herds. W7M have already lost 2 bodies in the first minute.
Not the booming start that we saw back on the open area push just a few moments prior. G2 putting their foot down for round 10 here. Taking a defiant stance against anything W7M want to try and deploy towards KZ. Maybe the last hope for some early round success here on the W7M side of things. He has been able to make it up to the spiral staircase without being noticed so far here. Has a good opportunity to potentially sneak up on Banana, but there is Overwatch for it. Virtue catches the play, knocks out KZ, and leaves only Julio and Volps alive. I believe both being played over by Square as well. Never mind, one is trying to work their way in from the basement. Julio, though, is so close to his end already here. Just been peppered down, shot after shot. Benja to finally finish things off as well. Takes him out, and Alamao to seal the deal with the flawless to end the round.
Incredible stuff here. G2 quickly getting this done. So we are on to match point now. W7M able to get a lot going for themselves, at least initially, inside of some of these rounds, but that one definitely not the case. G2 dispatching way too many members for W7M to try and make any semblance of a play unless they got something quite considerable going in their direction, which never came back on the pendulum swing. It was G2 all the way, full force and on the gas, and it doesn't really look like they're going to be slowing down anytime soon because there's nightmare fuel being added to this fire, John. It's a fact that, well, G2 now has access to the basement again.
Indeed, that is the case. So it's do or die. Very much so. It's been a couple times here, unfortunately, for W7M. They've been forced into it one more time to try and save themselves. Only 2 rounds is needed for the run back to take us to overtime, so it is not impossible in any sense of the word, especially when you consider that they are on the attacking side currently. But for G2, as Stokes had mentioned, going back to that basement site where the defense generally does have the best track record here, especially when you consider the amount of utility G2 is bringing to the table just to try and delay the players from W7M. This is going to be a rough one to try and work through. You've got the pulse on Alamao giving a constant info drip over to the players on G2 about where the execute is going to come from, which was a little bit of an issue the last time they tried to play it when you consider the sneak from JV92. You've got the Echo for an emergency stoppage of the plant if they should need that. Benja for the additional delay as well, and of course the smokes to build on top of that. This is a very annoying combo for W7M to try and work past.
Oh, it absolutely is. One that you never want to see when you start drawing things out, and also a little bit of a mismanagement from W7M on the top floor. No one really aware of what's going on in stock just yet, as they're already starting to try and push into Square, and that was almost a free kill there from Doki, but it's actually going to be Benja instead that takes down Herds. That was the man that had already gotten tagged up at the top of Square, and they knew that he was probably going to try and go for something, so Benja just hops to instead and is able to deliver the death blow that Doki was looking for inside of stock. Now W7M once again sent reeling. They have to try and figure out what they can do with this map. And you can see they're really worried about G2 potentially roaming on this mid floor. We are going to have some bodies, but they're going to be in some pretty solid positioning. They're playing pretty close to the stairwells, and this makes it to where they can quickly, just like Benja just did, escape back down the escape hatch whenever you want to. They've already gotten their job done. They've dealt the damage to herds, and now W7M has to try and make something of this, especially with Julio just really not doing too much right now in the kill department.
Well, halfway through the round now, and aside from the downing of herds, it has been relatively quiet so far here. Benja able to at least escape from his previous scenario. Keep the presence alive for G2 here as they try to close down the map on this very round. Nitro going up. This one could sing as well, but it's too telegraphed. W7M read into it and thankfully back away from it as well. Doki still able to strike true as he knocks out another member of the W7M roster, this time JV92. The Heartbreak's probably not going to be this too heavily since we're so deep into the round. Volts claims the first attacker-sided kill, but Doki still holding the line. That's until KZ gets a hold of him, however, but it won't matter as still far too many G2 kills happening back-to-back. And as a result of that, they'll be able to claim map number 1.
Fantastic bank there from G2, especially from the defensive side. Again, that's not something we normally see. And for W7M, that's really up to a couple of things. The abuse that we were seeing from G2 on a lot of those entries coming in, as well as